Hello. Thank you very much for coming to my presentation today. Today I'm going to be talking about content marketing in higher ed. My name is Brian Piper. I'm the Director of Content Strategy and Assessment at the University of Rochester in Rochester, New York. I've been in higher ed about 6 years, and before that I came from a defense contracting company doing content marketing there. There's a QR code here if you want to download the slide deck from today or any of the dashboards or tools that I'm going to talk about that we use to run the audits that I'll be discussing. So today we are talking about content. When I first applied for the job at the university, one of the first things I said was higher ed creates a lot of content. We put content out on different channels. We have variety of different audiences. How do we know what's working and what's not working? And what's the difference between content and content marketing? And that's what we're going to be talking about today. But first, I want to talk about what is your favorite book? I want everyone to take a moment and think about what's your favorite book. Imagine we're all in a big room and I have you all shout out the title of your favorite book. We wouldn't all yell the same book. Why is that? Why do we have different favorite books? My favorite book is Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. And it's because these books connect with us differently. They impact us. We read them at a time in our life when we're open to connecting with that story. And that's what we should be trying to do with our content. Jay Acunzo is a marketer, keynote speaker, and author. And he always says, you don't have to be the best. You just have to be their favorite. And we should do that with our content. Our content is the way that we get our audiences to know, like, and trust us. And that's what content marketing can do. So what is content marketing? How does your content become content marketing? And there are basically three things that turn your content into content marketing. First, it has to be valuable and compelling. It has to answer the questions that your audience is asking, or it has to solve the problems that they're facing. And then you have to have a specific target audience. You have to be talking to someone. When I first took this job, our content officers would come to our editorial staff and say, here's a new story we want to be working on. We'd be like, yes, it's a great story. It should be out there. Who's the audience? And they would say, everyone is the audience. So everyone is not an audience. You have to be talking to someone because eventually you want them to take some action against your content that's going to help you reach your strategic goals. If you're just putting out content and you're not connecting to your strategy and you're not measuring it, you're not talking to an audience, then you're just throwing it out there in the world and hoping that it's going to be helpful for someone. When you're thinking about which audience you want to choose, think about what person is going to take an action against this content that's going to have the biggest impact on helping you reach your goals. That is your primary audience. Now, I don't usually read from my slides word for word, but one of the things we say over and over is your customers don't care about your products or your services. Your potential students, your potential faculty, your potential donors, they don't care about the great things you're doing. They only care how it's going to help them, how it's going to make their lives easier. How can you help them make a bigger impact? And there are two ways to do that with your content. You can either inform and educate with your content. You can answer those questions and solve those problems. Or you can entertain, or you can, do the combination of the two. That also works, the edutainment. But you have to find something different about the story you're telling or the content you're creating that's going to engage with your users and make them see that that content is valuable. So University of Chicago is doing that very well with their podcast network. They started off with the Big Brains podcast, which focuses specifically on research that they're doing. And now they have over 20 different podcasts on their network, each one focused on creating content for a very specific audience and telling stories not just about the great research that's being done, but about the people who are doing those research and how the research is impacting their lives and changing the opportunities they have and having a bigger impact on the world. Now, when they started off with Big Brains, they were just thinking about highlighting their research. But then they discovered that they were actually involving their users in the conversation. They were pulling people in. They were building a community, and they weren't focused on number of downloads or how many people were subscribing. They were focused on how much engagement they were getting, how many people were commenting and reaching out to them about the episodes. When Paul Rand started it, he said, we want episode to feel like a dinner party. We want people to come in and sit with us and have these conversations. So there are a lot of different ways you can market your institution. So why should you focus on content marketing? It's just one little line item down in owned media. And I'm not telling you to not do any of these other things, but I'm saying think about leveraging your content for your marketing, not just throwing it out there in the world without a thought about who you're talking to and why you're putting it out there. So there are 6 different principles of content marketing. And the first one is you have to fill a need. You have to find a gap in the content that's out in the world that you can fill. What questions are not being answered? What problems are not being solved through other content from other people in your field? Then you need to be consistent. And that's the thing about content marketing is you create a vehicle to put out regular content, whether that's a weekly newsletter or a podcast that comes out every 2 weeks or daily news that's put out on your website. You want to build that trust with your audience and you want them to expect your content to come out. I have a weekly newsletter that I've put out for over a year. And the first time that I don't send that newsletter out on Monday morning and people don't get it, they start to wonder if they can really trust me, if I'm actually going to deliver and keep putting that content out regularly. You want people to read or listen or watch your next content. You want to build that anticipation. And you make that content valuable to them by putting it on a regular cadence that they can grow to expect. We often ask ourselves, if your content just stopped tomorrow, would anyone in your audience miss it? You also want to be human. You want to connect with people. You want to tell stories, especially in this age of AI. People want that human to human connection. That's the way we find people and show them that we understand, that we can help them because we are helping other humans. And then share your point of view. We are not unbiased news agencies. Now, understand that people may agree or disagree with that, but they're going to respect you for standing for that and sharing that. Now, sometimes this can be difficult in institutional settings, and I'm not saying you have to take sides, especially in political issues, but you should express your opinion about what's happening. And then avoid talking about yourself. Avoid that sales speak where you're just telling people how great you are and all the wonderful things you're doing and how much they should come and learn from you. The more people see you talk about yourself, the less they want to engage with you. The more you talk about them and how you can help them, the more interesting that content is for them. And always strive to be the best of breed. Try to put out the best content that you can to answer those questions or to solve those problems. You're not always going to hit the mark, but you should always be trying to. And when we talk about the process of content marketing, about how you take your regular content and turn that into content marketing, the first thing you need to be aware of are your strategic goals. You have to know right up front, what are the goals or objectives? What are you trying to do with this content? What actions are you trying to get your users to take that are going to help you reach your goals? And then the next thing is you have to define your audience. Who are you talking to specifically? That's really important because you want them to feel that you are connecting to them and talking to them one-on-one. One of my favorite examples is when Warren Buffett writes his annual letter to his shareholders. He starts off each letter, Dear Bertie. Bertie is his sister. And then he writes the letter as if he is writing it to his sister. And then when he gets done, he goes back and changes it to Dear Stakeholders. You want to know what problems your audience is dealing with. What questions do they have that you can answer for them? What is the process that they're going through to make that decision to either come to your school or come set up a counseling session or get more information? And then you have to define your niche. You have to understand how the audience decides, and then you have to choose your niche. So you're trying to promote a particular program. What is it about your program that makes it different from everyone else's? Is it the faculty you have? Is it the curriculum you focus on? Is it the type of student or the opportunities that you present? Figure out what it is that differentiates you within your content. And then you want to develop a content marketing mission statement. This is your North Star, and I'll talk about this a little bit more later. This is a guiding principle that you write down that all of your content creators can see and visualize and understand every time they're creating content. And when you're going through and looking at your content, always ask, does this content support the mission statement? So Boston University does a very interesting thing. They have 3 different publications. Instead of having one news channel, they have 3 different news channels that focus on very specific audiences. So the Bostonia is just focused on alumni. It has content about the alumni or content that would be interesting to their alumni. And then BU Today is what's going on campus, the focus area being different, events or activities, news items. And then The Brink is all about research. It's all research focused content. So 3 very different audiences they're focusing on. And they do share content between these 3 channels. So The Brink might use a story from BU Today, but only if that's a story that's going to be relevant to people who are interested in the research that's going on. So Purdue is one of the best examples of schools doing really good content marketing. Last year, they won numerous different awards, including Content Marketing Institute's Content Marketer of the Year. And they changed their entire strategy about 5 years ago to really start focusing deeply on their audience, telling their audience stories, and even better, getting their audience to tell their own stories. So between their podcasts, their alumni features, internal resources that they have, and then the video content that they create, their strategies and objectives drive their content marketing. We really need to start thinking about our content as an asset. Our content has value and can be leveraged. It has long-term value. When I first started at the institution and we would put our stories up on our news center, most of our story performance data would look like this. Right at the very beginning, there'd be a big spike of traffic when we promoted it out on social and then shared it in our newsletters, and then it would kind of die off and go flat. And once we started optimizing our content for specific audiences and for addressing specific questions, we saw content that would perform consistently over time. So a story that might get 1,000 views to start with and just stop will now continue to get traffic for years. So it may only be getting 50 views every day, but over time, that adds up and people keep coming back to that content. So you need to think of ways to start taking your old content and leveraging it. So content creates content. And this is the age of repurposing and redistributing content. AI can be incredibly helpful with this. So, for example, you can take a long form video that you might have. You could take that long form video and use a tool like Opus Clip, and it can automatically take that and figure out where the key points are within that video. And then it can make a bunch of multiple vertical videos that you could use on Reels and TikToks and put it up on different social channels. Then you can take that and create a transcript in Descript or Otter. And then you could throw that into ChatGPT and get a blog post, or you can get a whole bunch of different social posts. Now, do not copy and paste directly from any of these tools and put it right into your website or right on your social channels. These are great first draft tools and outlines. They are not final copy tools. And remember, with any AI tool, you have to fact check things. So when you're thinking about your audience, when you're writing your content, it's critical to keep reminding yourself that you are not the target for that content. The deans are not the target for that content. The faculty is not the target for that content, unless that's who you're trying to reach. So remember who you're writing it for. Use language that they will understand and write at a level where they will get it. So if you're trying to improve your admissions for graduate research students, yes, then use some jargon, use more technical terms. They will understand that and they'll know what you're talking about. They'll know you're talking to them. But if you're writing for potential undergraduate students, you may not want to use that same language. A great way to get your team on the same page about who you're talking to is to create personas. I love a good persona. I and when we talked to Adele Ravel from the Buyer Persona Institute for Epic Content Marketing, she had some great ideas around the things that you should put into personas. So you can put a lot of things into personas, right? You can put all sorts of demographic information, immigration information about what newsletters they read and publications they like. But the things that you need to make sure you include are, what are their priorities? What keeps them up at night? What do they spend their money and time thinking about and working on? So come up with like 3 to 5 different things that they are focused on. And then you want to start thinking about success factors. What looks like success for them? What are they trying to achieve? What can you help them with? And then what are the barriers that they face? What obstacles are they trying to overcome? And most importantly, what are the criteria they use to make decisions about what they're going to choose? What is their decision journey? Because you want to understand what content you should create to help get them into that next step as they're consuming your content. You need to know where you want them to go. So when we talk about content marketing mission statements, there's a great article on Andy Crestadina's site, Orbit Media Studio, where he talks about this and breaks down into what he calls the XYZ method. So this is the statement that you create. Our institution is where X, audience that you're trying to target, will go to find Y, whatever kind of content, right? Your blog, your podcast, your newsletter, for Z. So what is the benefit to them? What are they getting from that content? So different pieces of content can have different content marketing mission statements. They can have different audience targets, and different audiences will have different statements as well. But it should be very clear for each piece of content what you're trying to communicate and who you are trying to communicate to and what action you want them to take. Now, epic content marketing cannot be done without a clear and formidable why. You have to understand the mission statement behind why you're putting this content out. So we talk about channels a lot. Let's talk about a little bit about rented land versus owned land. So when we're talking about social primarily in this, so social media is different. Social media marketing is different than content marketing. I mean, social media marketing is certainly an aspect of content marketing, but once you put your content out on social channels, you have very little control over distribution or promotion. When you're putting content up on your own land, you have more control over who sees it and much more access to the data around that. Now, social media marketing tends to focus on message first, right? It typically tends to be longer form content. And there are a lot of different types of long form content that you can create. You can put your content out in your newsletter, on your website, in podcasts. You can have user generated content. There's all sorts of different ways to get your content out there. There's all sorts of different types of content when you're thinking about content marketing. But you should start with one. Start with one place where you can be the best, where you can put out high quality content, and ideally in a place where your target audience is going to consume it. And then promote that everywhere. Take that content, figure out how to share it on all these different social platforms, how to point it back to your own land. So it's great if you have 200,000 followers on your TikTok channel and they're going there and consuming content. But if TikTok gets banned or X decides to shut down your account, you have no recourse. But if your content pushes those viewers back to some newsletter, some area where they can subscribe, some place they can request more information, then you start getting control of that first party data. So content performance and optimization, this is the section that I love. This is my favorite part where I spend most of my time. Look at your data. If you're not looking at your data, you can't measure if your content is performing. You don't know what's working and what's not working. Data is also one of the best ways to get leadership to buy into these programs. But remember, the data is not the key. The story is the key. But if you can use your data to back up the story and you can integrate your data into your story, that's a great way for leadership to see, like, wow, now our stories, instead of getting 1,000 views, now they're getting 30,000 views. What changed? What are we doing different? Oh, we're optimizing for a particular audience. We should probably do this in other places. We should figure out other ways to consistently do this and offer this. This is our website optimization process. We have optimization processes for different content channels, but the website process is the most robust because you have the most control over that channel. So anytime we're working with a new school, a new department, or if I'm doing consulting, this is the process we use to figure out what's working, what's not, and how can we make it better. How can we find and identify the most important content and turn that into valuable assets? And it all starts up with the strategic audit. You want to really understand what your goals are. What are you trying to do? When our chemistry department came to us and said, we need a website redesign, we said, what are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? What spells success for you with your website? And then next you have to think about what spells success for the college, what spells success for the institution. And you have to know all of those goals from the top down and make sure you're considering all of those when you're putting out a new piece of content. So what goals are you supporting? What's the most important priority for that piece of content? And then next is the user audit. Who are your users? Who are you talking to? Are you reaching them? Is your content getting to them in the way that you're delivering it? And then next we go into the analytics audit. So do you have the right analytics accounts set up for the website? That means Google Analytics 4, Google Tag Manager, Google Search Console. Those are table stakes basics. Those are the bare minimums. And then you want to go into those and make sure that they are set up properly, that you're not duplicating tracking or missing content. You want to make sure that you've got the right conversions and goals and events set up in there to track. You want to make sure you're looking at what is driving overall traffic, what's driving organic traffic from search, and you want to start connecting those numbers and pulling those numbers out. And then there's the performance audit, right? This is the technical SEO end. How fast is your page loading? How optimized are your images? Do you have the right tags? Are you accessible? And then we look at the information architecture audit. And this is often overlooked, but you need to make sure that your site is well organized. How is your content structured? We'll talk about this a little bit more when we get into pillar pages, but the search audit is my favorite audit. This is kind of low-hanging fruit. It's very easy to make big improvements on your content performance by looking at how people are finding it. So you're looking at what opportunities you have with your existing content. What keywords should you be ranking for that you're not ranking for? Where are your content gaps? Looking at what your competitors are ranking for that you're not ranking for, and figuring out why that is. What content do they have that you don't have? How are they structuring their content or organizing their content or optimizing their content in ways that you're not? So then you take all the data from all those audits and then you do the optimization. You go back and you change things. You document the process of what you're changing. Then you see what's working and what's not working. You track that change and make sure you can go back and measure the improvement. And then you start that whole process again. This is a cycle that we go through. So every 3 months, we'll do audits on the content that we've optimized. So all the sites we've redesigned. Then we create dashboards for those departments to show them how things have changed and improved since going after their goals. So, once you do this for 2 or 3 teams, you slowly start showing other teams what's happened and what the results are. Then they're like, oh, you need to do our website too. And then you're going to get more resources. You're going to get more funding once you have some showcases like this. So this is one of my favorite dashboards. And you can download this in getmyslides.info. But this is a combination of Google Search Console and Looker Data Studio. And it's very easy. You grab the template, you can just point it at your Search Console account and it will automatically fill in. It'll tell you what terms people are searching for to find your content, what pages those searches are driving them to, and then how many times you're showing up in search, how many clicks you're getting, and what your average ranking position is. So you can get a lot of this information directly from Google Search Console, but it doesn't deliver it well. It segments out where you just look at queries or you'll just see the pages, and it doesn't return all the results. So when we look at this report in Search Console, it shows about 1,000 different positions. But when we run that through Looker Data Studio, now you can see there's, over 174,000 different terms we're ranking for. And now you know the questions people are asking, what searches they're doing, and you can go back to those pages and optimize those. So this is reactive optimization. This is content you've already got out there. You can go back to those pages and make sure you have these questions and these keywords on those pages. And this is how you start showing up in those featured snippets, and the people also ask questions. And this is a great way to find more opportunities to reuse that existing content. And that's what we did to take our news center stories from 1,000 to 30,000 hits. So then you can also do proactive content optimization. So this is new content that you're creating. So you take the keywords, the search items that you're focusing on, your strategic priorities that you're trying to capture, and you can put those into places like answerthepublic.com, where it will show you all the questions that people are asking online about these topics. You could also just go into Google and search and look through those people also ask questions and take those and put those questions into your content. We like looking at Quora and Reddit to go see what discussions people are having around that content, what questions they're asking, and see how you can leverage the information from those discussions to include those on your page as well. So when we talk about information architecture in higher ed, most information architectures, most institutional sites that you look at look something like this. You have your top level domain, then you have your subfolders. So like, for example, we have our news center. Then within that, you have different categories, different types of news articles that you'll put out. So we do research stories and, event stories, medical stories, student features, which is great. But we also have a medical center, and they do research stories. We have a music school. They do research stories. And we have all that content is scattered around and fragmented across our digital landscape. So pillar pages are a great way to start connecting that content. Both users and search engines want to see that you have a breadth of content in a particular area. So now you can take that pillar page and you can connect all of that content to a central location. So you put all the commonly asked questions on that page. You take the broad category of questions and then you link out to other related content across your digital landscape. And it makes it easier for your users to come in and navigate to those areas from one central place. And then it makes it easier also for search engines to see that you actually have authority in those areas. So how do we know that pillar pages work? Because Google doesn't tell us what their algorithm is, but what they do is they post their search quality evaluator guidelines online. So this is a 176 page document that they give to real people who they pay to go and do searches. And then they rank the quality of those searches. And based on the ranking factors within the document, they will change their algorithm to provide better answers because that's what search engines want to do. They want to provide the best answer. So we know that AI generative search is going to change the SEO landscape, but it's still just trying to put out the best answer. Now, people don't trust AI search yet, which is probably a good thing. But most of these search engines are now, in their AI search, are now starting to cite the sources that they pull from. So if you become one of these sources, you can do that by having a breadth of content showing value in this area. And by putting your content out in as many places as you can, so that when they are scraping sites, they see this same content out there over and over, answering these questions that people are asking. So within this 176 page document, there are 126 mentions of the EAT criteria. So EAT stands for experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trust. So do you have the experience, the real life experience to be able to talk about this topic? Do you have experts in the field? Is that where the content's coming from? Do they have the qualifications to make them experts? And then are you authorities? Are you the go-to source for this type of content? So those three factors come together to make up this trust factor. And it always comes back to trust. Do search engines see our content as trustworthy? Do our users see our content as trustworthy? And showing that you have this breadth of experience around a particular content area is a great way to build trust with your audience and a great way to build trust with search engines. So Harvard has done a great job with this. A few years ago, they launched their in-depth content feature. So it's content focused around different social topics. And then they do homepage takeovers with that content. And it's featured up on their homepage for several weeks. And then they push that content into their library of other in-depth content. And this content focuses on particular topic areas where they are subject matter leaders. So now they're creating these great pillar pages that link out to all sorts of different content they have across their site. So all sorts of different faculty and research expertise that is creating this content, and it's been very effective for them. So when we're talking about content marketing and marketing in general, we spend a lot of times looking at other higher ed institutions and looking at what they're doing and what's working for them. But we should also be looking at big B2B and B2C companies out there who are really thinking about the best ways to leverage their content and use content marketing. And one of the best examples of this is Red Bull. So there are fewer brands that have incorporated content into their business model more effectively than Red Bull. So we all think of Red Bull as a energy drink company, right? But it's not really. They don't make their own energy drink. They outsource that to a beverage company. What Red Bull makes is content, and what Red Bull creates is community. So Red Bull has mastered the customer experience by becoming the face of extreme sports and by associating its properties with adventure and pushing the limits. So Red Bull is not as much an energy beverage company as it is an aspirational brand. And look at Lego, look at Disney. These are all media companies. They are creating content and treating their content as an asset. So when you make the mind shift to content marketing, you need to change how you see your content. Your content is not just something you use to generate a lead or make a sale. It's an asset. It has value to drive action. So Ann Handley is the author of Everybody Writes. She's an amazing writer. She has a newsletter that she launched in 2018 to 2,000 people. So 5 years and 140 newsletters later, she has over 60,000 subscribers, and she has captured all of their first-party information. Jimmy Donaldson started posting videos to YouTube in 2012 when he was 13 years old. 11 years later, his channel, Mr. Beast, has more than 150 million subscribers, and he's one of the highest paid YouTubers in the world. General Electric has an audience of more than 100,000 subscribers to their GE newsletter, which features content on ongoing technology. So Ann Handley's a keynote speaker and an author. Jimmy Donaldson's a creator and a content entrepreneur, and GE is one of the largest companies in the world. So even though these businesses couldn't be more different from one another, subscription is key. Content as an asset is key. The content that you have creates long-term value. The content creates more content. When you think like a publisher, you develop your content, think about it as an asset. Having that mentality means you get to think about all the resources that create and distribute that content differently. It's not about a marketing campaign. It's about creating long-term engagement with customers through epic content. So here are a few action items to take away from this today. First of all, when you're creating content, think, is your content strategic? Does it align with the goals that you're trying to achieve? Is there one audience? Are you talking to one specific group of people with each piece of content? So different pieces of content are going to have different audiences, different strategic goals, but every piece of content should have one audience it's trying to get you to connect with to help you reach your goals. And then, does your content matter? Would anybody care if your content went away? I have a lot of podcasts that I listen to, and with some of them, if they disappeared, I'd be upset. I wait for them every week and I look forward to them. And that is what our content should strive to do. And then also think, when you're creating content, is there an opportunity for content marketing? When you start seeing traction on your content, when you start seeing content that is successful, go back to that, repurpose it, reimagine it. Is there a better way we can deliver this content, these thoughts and ideas on another channel? Is there a way we can make it consistent so that our users can start to expect that content and look forward to that content? So I want to thank you very much for your time today. Unfortunately, I'm not able to be here in person to answer questions, but if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. You can connect with me on LinkedIn or email or find me on brianwpiper.com. Always glad to talk about AI, content marketing, analytics, or SEO. Thank you very much.